let's edit some pictures. What's going on, guys? Kaush here, welcome back to the channel. I asked you on my Instagram to send me in any underwater pictures that you guys want me to edit, and that's what we're going to do today. Before we start the video, let me just preface by saying that this is just how I would edit my shots. I'm not necessarily saying that this editing is making the pictures better or worse, but this is how I would edit them if they were my shots. So let's jump into the first shot, and this is actually a shot from probably the rarest thing that I've ever seen in the water. So this shot comes from Ruhi. I met Ruhi out in the Maldives the first time I was there, and this shot is actually of a double whale shark encounter. Seeing one whale shark is pretty rare, but seeing two together and interacting with each other is an incredible thing. So as you can see, it was taken pretty deep down, that's why there's not a lot of warm tones in this. It's also super grainy as well, so we can try and fix that. So because it was taken quite deep down, I'm going to try and play on that and make it quite a dark and moody kind of vibe to this. First things first, we're just going to make some basic adjustments to this, increase the warmth a little bit and bring down the shadows. Then after that, we're going to come down into the tone curve and just do a basic S-curve. We're just going to emphasize the blacks a little bit more and bring them down. Then the next part of this is pretty simple. It's the HSL, and what I'm going to do here is exactly what I showed you in my previous editing video. So go and check that out first before watching this if you want. What we're going to do is shift the aquas more towards the dark blues and then desaturate them most of the way. What this is going to do is bring down all those light blues and bring in some more warmth. Then what I did next was go down to the color grading tab. This was previously the split toning tab, and what we're going to do is just shift everything more towards the shadows and the darks just to help bring in that moody vibe. Then as you can see, there's a lot of grain in this, so we're just going to bring up the noise reduction a little bit. Because it was taken so deep, there's not a lot of light coming through, which increases the grain in the shot. Then I went down to the calibration tab and just played with the red and green sliders mainly just to bring in some more warmth into the shot. Then I went back up and probably used the most powerful tool for a shot like this, which is the dehaze. So I actually dehazed quite a lot, and it can have a really big impact on it, as you see in this shot. You don't want to go overboard on it, but for a shot like this, to make it a bit more moody, this is actually a really good tool. Now this isn't the most sharp or in focus shot. I think it was taken while on the move. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the brush tool and brush over the individual sharks and make them stand out a little bit more. To do this, grab the brush tool. I like to set my density to about 50% and then brush over the subject. I set my exposure to the max when I'm brushing just so I can see what I'm brushing over, but you can also press the O key on your keyboard to show what's been brushed and what's not. So after I brush one shark, I zoom back out so I can see what's going on in the whole picture and then play with the settings of the brush. A good way to kind of faux being in focus and sharpness is to increase sharpness a little bit and also increase the texture and the clarity. Don't go overboard with the texture or the clarity, but if you've got a shot that's just out of focus, it can be a good way to kind of fake it being in focus again. After that, it was pretty simple. I added a couple of graduated filters just to increase the darkness around the edges, put some dehaze in those as well just to amplify that and bring attention back to the subject. And then that's it, pretty much done. If you were going to put this on Instagram, I would then flip it vertically and crop it 4x5, straighten it up a little bit, and I think that's really good. So if you look at the before and after side by side, you can see there's a really big difference there. Before, it's all completely blue. You can't really see a lot of detail in the shot. The sharks aren't very clear. But after a few of those changes, bringing down the aquas and increasing the dehaze, the sharks really stand out, especially the spots against the dark background, and I think this is a really good shot. So now this second shot comes from Katarina, and it's of a really cool thresher shark. It's a screenshot from a GoPro video, so it's got a bit of grain to it. It's not the sharpest, but I think we can work with it. So straight off the bat, I can see that there's a lot of grain in it, and I want to bring that down. But also, there's not a lot of warm tones in this, but there's a lot of aquas. So if you know what I do normally with aquas, we'll know that we can take those down and bring in some warm tones. The shot has a lot of lights coming in from the top of the shot, so I want to play on those and do the reverse of the last shot. Not make it dark and moody, but make it more light and kind of airy, if you will. So some basic adjustments just to bring the shadows up, bring the highlights up as well, reduce some of that saturation, and then go and do a basic S-curve again in the tone curve. When I was doing this S-curve, I brought the mid-tones up a little bit and the highlights up a little bit as well, just to exaggerate them. In terms of colours for this shot, it's mainly aquas with a little bit of green in it as well. So we're going to desaturate the aquas all the way, which is going to help bring out some warm tones. Then in terms of luminance, we're also going to bring up the aquas all the way, just so it emphasises the light in this shot. Then down to the colour grading, we're going to shift it all towards the light side. So increase the mid-tones and increase the highlights as well. After that, we're going to come down to calibration. And with this one, I kind of like the tones that are going on that we have so far. So I'm not going to mess around with this a lot. Now this is looking pretty good, but I just want to bring up a graduator filter from the bottom just to make the sand and the rocks a little bit warmer. So desaturate it a little bit and bring up the highlights, and you can see that some warm tones begin to come in, especially on the starfish there sitting on the rock. Then I brought down another graduated filter from the top just to emphasize the highlights that we already have there to make it look like there's a light shining down. This makes it look like there's a nice glow coming in from the top of the water. Then after that I grabbed the brush tool, and this is going to be a trend in this video that you see me doing. So we're going to brush over the shark and just increase the clarity a little bit and decrease the saturation. We're going to try and make it stand out a little bit more. Then after that, final step is just to increase the noise reduction a little bit. Like we said before, it's quite grainy and I want the shot to be quite soft and kind of dreamy. I'm pretty happy with it, to be honest. We've taken it from kind of a lot of greens and blues to bringing back a lot more whites into the sand. You can see that the starfish has got a lot more warm tones in it as well. And I quite like the dreamy kind of vibe we've gone with this. It's quite opposite to a lot of the shots that I do, which are more moody and darker shots. Now this next shot comes from Ludovine, and it's of a sea turtle flying over the reef. This is quite a difficult shot to edit because the kind of aquas and greens are muddled together, and what I would normally do is desaturate the aquas, but if we do that here, it's not going to give it a good look. It's going to make it really grey and kind of grainy once you get rid of all that saturation. So we're actually going to play with the blues in this one and kind of use them to our advantage. In the original picture you can see that the turtle and the reef kind of blend together and you can't really see what's going on there. So I want to make the turtle stand out from the reef. So decrease the shadows just to bring some more depth into the reef. And then after the tone curve I came down to the colour grading and shifted things back towards the shadows. I also put some warm tones into the shadows and the mid-tones, and that's going to help decrease some of the blues in the reef. After that, a couple of graduated filters. The first at the top of the picture just to increase those highlights and bring in the whites a bit more. And then a couple at the bottom just to bring some depth into the reef. So increase the shadows and increase the dehaze ever so slightly. I also reduced the noise in the top one as well. Because it's not that clear of a shot, there's quite a lot of grain in it, and I want to give it more of a soft look to this shot. Then after that, I brushed over the turtle and increased the clarity and the contrast. This is just to make it stand out from the reef and to really highlight it as the subject of the picture. Then a couple more graduated filters back at the bottom of the picture. It was looking a little bit too desaturated for me, so I increased some of the blues on that and also dehaze as well. So if you look at the side-by-side comparison, you can see this is a big difference. We haven't really done that much work to it. Before you could barely tell what the subject of this picture was, you would be forgiven for thinking it was just a reef. It's difficult because there's no warm tones in this, and the shell of the turtle obviously camouflages in perfectly with the reef on this shot, so we really had to make the turtle stick out as the subject. All in all, I'm pretty happy with this edit, and you can really see the difference between the reef and the turtle in the end product. Okay, so now our next shot comes from Cova and is of bull sharks, which I'm not even slightly jealous about. So this is only a JPEG, just like the others, but this has probably kept the most detail within the shot, and so it gives us the most to play with. But if you zoom in, you can see that while there is a lot of detail, there's also quite a lot of noise as well. So we're going to try and fix that. In terms of color correction for this, it's going to be a pretty simple one. We're going to bring down the shadows a little bit, and I'm also going to shift the warmth up a little bit as well. Then once I came down to the calibration tab, I shifted it again over to the warmth just a little bit. I didn't want those super dark blues, but I wanted to bring in some warmth into those, kind of verge them onto the greens almost a little. Then what you can see that's really nice about this shot is that you've got the highlights coming in from the top and the surface of the water, and then a lot of shadows coming in as well. And we just want to highlight that a little bit more. So I brought one graduated filter up from the bottom, increased the shadows, and brought in some dehaze a little bit. We don't want to lose those sharks that hang around in the background of the shot by decreasing the exposure too much. Then I want to make the shark that's in the front really the focus of it. So brush over it and increase the clarity a little bit and the texture. Bring down the saturation ever so slightly because there's quite a lot of aquas going on there, and shift it a little bit into the warmer side. Then as you can see in the middle of the surface of the water there, you can see almost where the sun is coming out. So there I put in a radial filter and just increase the highlights and reduce the textures a little bit, just so it looks like the sun is really shining through the water. So that was it, pretty quick edit actually, probably the quickest out of the lot. As you can see, because it was really well exposed in camera and there was a lot of details within the shot, we were able to get a lot out of it. The colour corrections were really easy, and all in all this edit only took me a couple of minutes. It's a really good shot and it really highlights the importance of trying to get as much right in camera as possible just to make the post-production super easy. Now this next shot comes from Dr. Minnie, who works for Olive Ridley Projects as a Squirtle vet out in the Maldives, and it's of a hawksbill turtle cruising over a reef. This is a really nice shot, but the colour correction is a little bit difficult on this because the aquas and the greens are kind of mingled together, and while it looks like it's greens, it's actually aquas. So if we desaturate it all the way, it would look really cool. I actually ended up doing two versions of this picture just because straight off the bat I thought it would look quite cool in black and white. So on Lightroom, if you press V, you can actually see an instant black and white version of the picture. And just from looking at that, I knew that we could do something with this. So the easiest way to immediately make a picture black and white is just to decrease the saturation all the way. So that's what I did on this. Pull the saturation bar all the way down and you've got an instant black and white picture. Then you can do the basic adjustments just like you would for any other picture. So I increased the contrast a little bit, brought down the shadows just to add more depth to the picture. This is a screenshot from a video, so there's not the greatest of detail in this. So we're going to try and separate the turtle from the background. So on the tone curve, bring down the shadows a little bit more and increase the highlights. The highlights are all in the back of the picture mainly, so we want to blow those out a little bit. Then I brought a graduated filter up from the bottom right just to increase the depth in the reef there and make the turtle stand out a little bit more from the background. Then you know what time it is. Brush over the turtle and make it stand out a little bit more from the background. Increase the contrast, bring down the shadows, and increase the clarity and the texture. This is going to help set it apart from the background. Then the next thing we're going to do to help differentiate between the turtle and the background is use a radial filter. If you put it over the turtle, it's going to affect everything in the background. So what I want to do is decrease the contrast and increase some of the exposure in the background, just so the turtle's darker and stands out a little bit more, and it also makes the background a bit softer. And then that's it for that. If you look at it close up, when it's black and white, it looks really cool. The light coming in from the top of the reef really makes this shot stand out, and I think it looks really good as a black and white. Then I also did a normal color correction version of this as well. Like I said before, it's kind of difficult to take the aquas all the way out of this and bring in a lot of warm tones, so we're going to keep them in there and use them to our advantage. I want a really faded look to this and give it more of a dreamy look, so when you're doing the tone curve, if you bring up the tail of the curve up, it's going to increase the fade in the shadows. Then some more normal color correction. We are going to desaturate it a little bit, but if we take it all the way down, it's going to make it really grey. We don't want that. So just take it down a little bit, increase the luminance of the aquas and decrease the luminance of the blues. Then, potentially the most important part of color correcting this shot is to go into the color grading tab and increase the warmth in the highlights, the midtones and the shadows. So normally I only mess around with about 5% saturation when I'm doing the color grading tab. I just dragged it all the way to the warm side, and that brings out a lot more of the warm tones without messing with the cold tones too much. Then a couple of graduated filters. The first one, just like in the black and white version, at the bottom of the picture just to increase the shadows, and then another one at the top of the picture just to increase the highlights and bring down the noise a little bit as well. The light is kind of coming over the reef at the top, so we really want to emphasize that and give it a soft look at the top of the picture. Then brush over the turtle and increase the clarity and the texture just a little bit to make it stand out from the back of the reef, and after that, this is that shot done. This actually is my favourite shot out of the lot, and even though it's only a screenshot, you can see how much you can do with a little bit of work. There's just something about the light coming in over the top of the reef and it kind of being soft, and the turtle giving you the side eye that I really like about this shot. Alright, and then our last picture comes from Farah, aka BR Ranger on Instagram, and it's of a manta ray just cruising over the reef. Now this is a really well composed picture, and while the colours look pretty good, it's actually quite difficult to colour grade this one. I think it's mainly because the blues in the background are very kind of flat and it's difficult to bring anything out of them. And it took me a while of playing around with the settings on this one to get a good edit. So first things first, what we need to do, it might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but it's actually to make the shot a little bit more blue. What this is going to do is help to then desaturate it later on. So in the basic adjustments, I brought it more towards the blue and shifted the purples up higher as well. Then again, in this, dehaze is going to be your best friend because it's going to bring out those blues and those purples. So I did quite a lot of dehaze to this shot. Then when it comes down to the HSL, we want to take out most of the saturation in the aquas, but not all the way, because otherwise it will make the rocks look really bad and grey. We want to bring up the luminance of the aquas just to get rid of them a bit more, and then decrease the luminance of the blue. That's because the majority of the blues are on the back of the picture, and I really want to make the manta stand out from the background. By decreasing the luminance in the background, it will help do that. Then in the calibration tab, I messed around with the red and the blue primary quite a lot, just because I don't like that flat blue background and I wanted to increase the warmth in that. Then I pulled up a graduated filter from the bottom just to bring in some more vibrance into the rocks. Put some more shadows in there and dehaze it a little bit and shift it to the purple a little bit more just to give the reef a little bit more colour. Then we're going to take the brush tool, brush over the entire manta, make it stand out, clarity, texture up. Then over the white parts of the manta, I just painted over it, desaturated it because it still had quite a lot of blues in there, and increased the whites just to make it stand out and make it a pure white. Then after that, that's pretty much the shot done. The manta is really the main subject and is shown in that way, and the background is a really nice dark blue. We bring back a lot of natural tones into the sand and into the rock and make the reef look a little bit better as well. All in all, I'm very happy with this edit. So those are all the photos that we're editing in this video. Hopefully you can see that by just making a few minor changes, you can make a big impact to photos that you might not think worked that well. Thank you to everyone that sent in their pictures. Make sure to go check out their Instagrams, they're all on the screen. I'm sorry if I didn't get around to editing your picture, but I had a lot of fun doing this video, so I'm sure to do more in the future. Stay tuned on my Instagram, I'll be posting on there asking for pictures to edit in the future. Let me know in the comments if you like these edits and if you want to see more of these kind of videos. Subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this and to never miss a notification. I've got lots more editing videos and also camera settings coming soon. I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one.